Hey guys, and as you can probably tell here, I have a pair of the newly released Nike Superfly 5 in the launch colorway, Lava Blast, or Pink Blast, sorry, and Total Crimson with some Volt and Black in the FG stud configuration. And so I thought I'd do a quick little review on it, as I did get a couple of hours in it yesterday. Lots to talk about, really. So let me start getting into it. So if you watched some of my reviews in the past, you probably already know that the Superfly 4 is my favorite all-time boot to use. That's my go-to boot for games and etc. all that. And what Nike have done with the Superfly 5 is they have, I would have to say, improved it a little bit. The upper has a little bit of more sturdiness to it. The ankle portion is more comfortable. Not that I had too much problems with the 4, but this one is noticeably more comfier out of the box. The Soleplate is no longer carbon fiber, so we have no issues with cracking. I know there was a lot of issues with cracking over here in the forefoot. And the overall fit is a little bit more snug. So in all aspects, Nike have really tweaked it a little bit. I would have to say that the overall feel on the ball is almost the same, although it does feel very different in hand, especially the upper. Overall, when you have it on feet and are playing with it on the field, it does feel very similar to the Superfly 4, and that's what I really love about this shoe. So let's start off with the aesthetics of the launch colorway of the Superfly 5. So we have Total Crimson on the outside, and then we have this new split design that seems to be carrying over to future colorways as well. I saw a few future colorways released, and they do have this split design as well. But yeah, moving on. Total Crimson on the outside, a Pink Blast in the middle, and then Volt swooshes on either side. Volt Mercurial branding in the heel like usual. Volt studs, black sock, and sole plate. And what this colorway really reminds me of is the Fireberry colorway that we saw in the Launch Vapor 9. One of my favorite colorways of recent years, for sure. However, on these, I'm not a crazy fan of it, and it looks more of a American football style cleat than a footy boot, in my opinion. They kind of switched up the orientation of the swoosh. I have an Academy pack to compare. It's really hard to see the swoosh on the Academy pack. But the orientation is a little bit shifted, and I think that's what gives it more of a football cleat look, because American football cleats, sorry, have this sort of design. I have to say I prefer the Superfly 4 look a lot more than the Superfly 5, but I'm sure it'll grow on me as we get through more colorways and seeing more people wearing them on TV, I suppose. So that's aesthetics out of the way. Let's get into the actual materials of the upper. And so Nike are still using this Flyknit material, and it's very interesting. In hand, the upper is completely different from the Superfly 4. I don't know if my camera is picking it up, but let's see. They've implemented these small ridges. Can you hear that? That's my finger, well, what's left of my fingernail going through the ridges of the Superfly upper. And it's interesting, it has this sort of caged design and caged feeling to it. And I think this is what makes it feel so much more snug than the Superfly 4. Which is interesting to me because the Superfly 4 was snug in itself, but Nike took it a step further and made it a little bit more snug in these. So we have these ridges, which are highlighted by these black lines, and they run across the whole midfoot and forefoot. And so what these lines do also provide more sturdiness, and I would say better durability, as they give it a little bit of thicker texture on the upper. I can say that these are fairly broken in already, and you can see the flexibility of it. And then now let me show you the Superfly 4, and I don't know if you can tell, but the Superfly 4 is a lot more flexible after being broken into. These one are a little bit more tough, a little bit thicker feeling in hand, and I could say on feet as well. A little bit thicker feeling, a little bit more padded on the foot. Again, we see that the ACC coating that Nike has been putting on all their stuff. I don't see how this really affects performance in any way. I don't feel any extra grip in rain or grass, but that's just me. And one thing I couldn't mention about the upper is this grippiness feeling is very similar to the Magista Obra, both thickness-wise, upper, and the grippiness. Very similar to the Magista Obra. So it looks like what Nike has done is almost combine the Superfly 4 and the Magista Obra and created this upper, which is nice because we get the best of both worlds now. So now let's move on to a huge change in the Superfly series, which is the Soleplate. Now this is the first time that we've seen a Superfly without carbon fiber. And while the carbon fiber was awesome, I personally loved it, especially the look of it. I mean, that's just ridiculously cool. They took it away for economical purposes as well as performance purposes, as this is supposed to be a lot lighter than carbon fiber, and I would probably guess more durable, as carbon fiber did tend to crack fairly easily. I've had that problem on one of my pairs, but luckily my Academy pack still is running strong. It might have been just a one-off, but I know a lot of people had a problem with the carbon fiber sole plates. And not only the sole plate material, but also the stud configuration. Very different than the Superfly 4. And it looks like what the Superfly 5 is focusing on is acceleration. The way that the studs are oriented, they'll dig into the ground and they'll help you get that little push off that you need. These will grab the dirt or turf and will push you off easier, theoretically. Obviously, I didn't feel much of a difference at all. It is a solid stud pattern. I did feel that the heel stud patterns, though, were a little bit different. I had to get used to it, but as it felt a little weird to me at first. But I got used to it, and it turned out to be fine. I think it might have just been in my head. I looked at these, and I was like, ooh, these are interestingly oriented. But and so when I put them on my feet and started running for the first time, I felt it, and I think you guys will too, but you will get used to it, and it won't bother you at all. But the studs in the forefoot are all fine. That's perfect for me. Didn't have any problems with that at all. And I can mention that the Soleplate is still flexible in the right places and not flexible in the right places. So it's pretty much the same functionality as the carbon fiber. So I'm not really disappointed that they got rid of it. And really it's just a good replacement on the Soleplate. Now let's move on to the heel. And so they improved the sock part. They pretty much implemented the heel design of the Hypervenom 2, which I can say is probably the only positive of the Hypervenom 2, the heel area, as it was really comfortable. But they put that on the Superfly 5 and they've improved it. It's more comfortable. There's none of that. They don't have that spine that they used to have. This spine, I know it used to bother a lot of people. Of course, I didn't have any problems with it at all, even out of the box. But I know it was a huge majority of people that that spine cut up that outside of their ankles and Achilles. But they did improve it, and it does feel more comfortable. And really, that's all I have to say about the heel. It's just more comfortable, period. It fits better, and you shouldn't have any problems with it now. So I believe I covered all the specs, all the new specs, and anything worth noting. Sorry. And I think I'll move on to an on feet so you can see what they look like on feet. Alright, so getting them on is pretty much the same as the Superfly 4. It is difficult. There we go. It is fairly difficult to get them on. A little bit more difficult than the Superfly 4 because of the less flexible upper, so you really have to push your foot into it. Okay, let's see. Really have to wrap the sock around and pull your foot right in. I'm not going to bother with the laces, but you get the general idea of what they look like on feet. And if you've seen American football cleats before, I think you'll notice and relate to me about them looking fairly Americanized in terms of football. But the overall design isn't too bad. I love the colorway, for sure. Definitely reminds us of the Vapor 9 in that Launch Fireberry colorway. Definitely the heel, a lot more comfortable than the Superfly 4. Definitely a very snug fit throughout, again compared to the Superfly 4. My feet are hugging, really being hugged against the upper. My toes are right at the top, right at the tippy top. So sizing wise, I'm wearing an 8.5 in these Superfly 5, and I wore Superfly 4 in an 8.5, and both are a perfect fit. I would just say that the Superfly 5 is a little bit tighter, a little bit more sturdier. As you can see, I can't really flex my toes as well, but I do still have a little bit more breaking in to do for these. There's a stud pattern. But yeah, so I would definitely say go true to size compared to what you had in the 4. I can also say, well, for me, I wore the same size in the Magista Obra and for the Superfly 4. I both wore 8.5 in those, and while the Magista Obra was tighter, I still wore an 8.5 in those, and I would recommend you get the same size you were in the Magista Obra, as the fit is very similar. My toes are really pushed up against there. Let me see if I can switch into a pair of Superfly 4 and maybe just tell you off the bat how they fit and feel on feet. As you can see right there, a lot easier to get Superfly 4 on my foot. The upper is a lot more flexible. You can see my toes moving up pretty easily. These ones I'm really struggling. Not to say that they aren't flexible, but they are a little bit more sturdy than the Superfly 4. But yeah, it's not as snug. I do have, it's a nice comfortable snug feel. These ones are really tight. But I would say if I went up to a size 9 in the 5, it would feel a little bit too long. So I stuck with 8.5, and it feels just right. But yeah, that's it. I'm just gonna go a quick turnaround just for you to compare. And that's really all I have to say about the Superfly 5 for right now. Durability wise, they seem like they're going to hold up very well. The gluing is a little bit better done on the 5 than the 4. On both turf and natural grass. And I'm sure I missed something, so if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. See ya.